Here with me, Ken Cuccinelli, former acting deputy DHS secretary during the previous Trump administration. Ken, great to see you tonight. I know you actually helped push forward the reforms of the H-1B visa program during Trump 1. We're going to get into that in a moment. But your reaction to the president's comments on the angle this week and some of the reaction, which has gotten, put it bluntly, really heated on the right about what the president said about the Chinese students and about the H-1Bs.
Well, I think on the Chinese students, it isn't just the Chinese. You're correct in your monologue, and I would extend it to say that countering China is one of the rare areas where you can get pretty substantial bipartisan support in Congress. Even though they haven't been very active, they're supportive of being tough with China. Very rare area of bipartisan agreement. The president, as you noted, has been more successful, not just with China, but around the world in both trade and diplomacy. My joke for his Nobel Peace Prize is, how many peace agreements does Donald Trump have to get the Nobel Peace Prize? One more than he actually gets, because they hate him more than they believe in peace. And he is a peace through strength peace achiever in that arena. But the H-1B subject is very, very sensitive because Congress, both sides of the aisle, is really against the American worker on this and has been for decades. They favor the big tech companies and the other big companies. You rattled off a few who have fired more Americans and hired more foreigners this past year. And I and every other American asks, well, then isn't that a failure of this system? I think the president's goal, zeroed in on by the Secretary of the Treasury that you quoted there, is a noble goal: to bring in super talented people from other parts of the world to prepare America to rebuild and carry forward. You use shipbuilding as an example. There are others on a 5-year basis. Okay. But that is not what H-1Bs have been. They have been mass scale, low level, middle class displacing jobs. And it's been very detrimental to America and Americans. And that's why the reaction, I think.
That's the reality of it. 80% of H-1B visas are for entry-level, junior-level jobs. These are the same jobs, by the way, that AI is threatening to eliminate. So there's no shortage of capability here in America. There's zero need for H-1Bs for entry-level or junior-level jobs.
700,000 H-1B visa holders in America. Now, who is coming to this country to take these high-skilled jobs? As I mentioned, STEM fields dominate the occupations, and most of the workers come from India. In fact, 70% of H-1B visa holders come from India. Another 10 to 15% come from China. 80% of H-1B visa approvals are for entry-level or junior-level jobs. That's a little hard to stomach when we hear that we're not talented enough or that we're not skilled enough for these jobs, when you consider that most of these jobs are actually at entry or junior-level jobs. And it's definitely to the benefit of corporations, tech companies, that can hire foreign workers, trust me on this, cheaper than American workers. This is laid out, by the way, by billionaire tech entrepreneur Palmer Luckey.
There's so much H-1B abuse. You would not believe what I saw when I was in Silicon Valley. It is insane. It's obviously a program to try and replace U.S. workers with basically slave labor that can't ever escape. The H-1B abuse is crazy.
And I would suggest it's not just the abuse. The abuse is inherent to the entire program. Bill Mitchell is a guy who's unbelievably, he's an apologist for H-1B. It just makes my stomach roll every time I read this guy's post, but he is that side of the aisle. He's saying, oh, there are 4 levels of H-1B tech hires. Trump, in his comments with Lauren Ingraham, was defending only certain talents. He was referring to levels 3 and 4. Those jobs have zero wage disparity with Americans. All right, well, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at his table here. 4 jobs of H-1B, entry level. This says 15%. And I don't know if these are true, but let's take him at his word. This is what he's claiming to support his argument. Level 2, the next level up, 50%. All right, so, and both of those get paid substantially less than Americans. 35% less than Americans for level 1, entry-level jobs, 20% less for Americans under level 2. Then level 3, expert developer, gets paid the same as an American. Oh, why are we bringing in that? Then we're simply displacing Americans. Their value to the company is apparently the same. There's no net difference in income, in compensation. So why is it in America's interest to take that job away from one of our fellow citizens and give it to a third worlder when there's no difference, according to him, in compensation? So to my mind, level 1, 15%, level 2, 50% of H-1B, level 3, 20% of H-1B, that's 50, 60, 70, 85% of H-1Bs. There's no reason for them to be here other than cutting wages under Americans or simply displacing Americans from productive employment and giving that to an Indian who collectively send $140 billion a year out of the American economy back to India. An American in that level 3 job, making exactly the same money, no wage competitiveness from his Indian replacement. The American would be spending all that money, all $140 billion on American goods and services, on homes, on washing machines, on vacations, on everything, cars. That money would be in the American economy. It's no different than if an Indian was sneaking in with a hand vacuum and sucking cash out of your wallet. Why would you permit that? Level 4, the highest level, they get paid more than Americans. So you might argue that they legitimately bring more value to the American corporation hiring them than that corporation thinks it can get from an American. They're paying a premium for those people. I would still not let them in either. But at least there's an economic argument to be made there. There's a talent differential argument to be made there. That's still, even if you buy that bullshit, that's still only 15% of H-1Bs. So why isn't Trump coming out and saying, you know what? That 15%, those are the ones that would be hard for us to just pull the plug on. They add a certain value that we, in fact, can't immediately replace. We have to train up Americans to that standard. As we do that, we'll end those H-1B visas too, but we have to keep those going for an interval time period. But what about the rest? What about the other 85%? What the F are we doing? They're either just undercutting American wages or being a simple replacement for American citizens so that $140 billion a year can be sent out of our nation so that our American citizen doesn't have a job, but the Indian who will never assimilate does? The Indian who's supposed to be here for only 3 years, we're giving him that job, that experience, that resume checkbox. We're giving that to a third worlder we're fully, we say, intending to send back to his home nation in a mere 3 years and denying that opportunity, that income, that experience, that training to an American citizen for nothing, no difference in compensation. It's contemptible. As I say, all this table tells me is that 85% of H-1B visas should be incinerated, and we should do that immediately. Bill Mitchell, again, a boomer. What happens if we end H-1Bs tomorrow? We'll completely fall behind in AI. The rest of the world eats our lunch. The sky will fall. He's imagining H-1Bs as being O-1 visas, as all these people are Einsteins. It's just a lie. It's just a lie. Boomers don't, like Bill Mitchell, don't understand that 99% of H-1B, the chart Bill Mitchell uses this chart. By his own argument, it's 85%. Not top tier AI talent. They manage servers for Bank of America in a basement in Charlotte. The real talent of H-1B visa holders is their willingness to work for less than an American. Immigration is 100% inseparable from the affordability question because immigrants drive down wages, and I don't know if she says it in this clip, drive up costs. American citizens are competing for every scarce American resource: housing, healthcare, education, employment, social services, traffic space on the roadways, everything. Seats on commercial aircraft, everything in life. We're competing with 90 million illegal migrants and another 90 million legal migrants of various visa flavors: H-1Bs, student visas, tourist visas, green card holders, paperwork citizens. Imagine how the cost of everything would come down if you were not competing with tens of millions of foreigners in your own nation for those same resources. You have to outprice them, outbid them. They take that seat on the airplane, your seat goes up. They buy that house, it's no longer available for you. Tens of millions of people placing extra demand on every scarce resource drives up the cost of that demand. Supply and demand. This is not rocket science.
The H-1B visa holders who come in here, they are not specialized. They have no talent. You know what their talent is, Megan? They're willing to work for $50,000 a year. Exactly. They have driven down the wages in STEM, which means that our brightest kids are not going into STEM because what are you going to do? Like graduate after 4 years with student loans and take a job where you're making $50K? You're not going to do that. So we're actually driving our brilliant Americans out of STEM because we're importing Indians to do those jobs.
Right. Fair point. It's a chicken and egg problem, right? Are Americans not capable of providing these services, or are the importation of tens of millions of low-priced third-world competitors making those professions uneconomic for Americans? By the way, the Indians get their education, even when it's real and not faked, for free. So they're not incurring $100,000 in student debt to get a STEM degree. The American is. So the American needs a higher wage to make that whole process financially sensible. We're driving our best out of STEM because we're importing low-cost replacements and making that STEM field uneconomic for our own American citizens.
It is so atrocious and terrible, and it is such a betrayal of the American worker. And this is a fight we absolutely have to have right now because Trump has done an amazing job of attracting, I think the number at this point is about $15 trillion in manufacturing here and everything around that. So much of that is going to be AI training and AI work. And we need to insist that every one of those jobs goes to an American. You know, again, like people ask me a lot, what is the correct number of immigrants into America right now? And my answer is kind of the same, Megan. It's somewhere close to zero. Like it might not be zero. There maybe is another Elon Musk out there who really wants to come here. But right now we're just bringing in, bargain basement programmers when those could be middle-class jobs for American workers, Americans who are struggling right now. Why are so many people on food stamps? Why is healthcare so expensive? I mean, these are the questions we have to be having, and the affordability question is totally inseparable from this question of immigration. The fact that we have so many immigrants in this country is a huge reason why Americans make so little and are struggling with basics like food. If you think about it, Megan, every illegal immigrant in America is either working, meaning they're driving down the wages in that industry, or they're living off the government, meaning the American taxpayer is subsidizing them. There's no in between, right? They're not being funded by somebody in their home country to live here in America. Both of those options are utterly unacceptable.
Yep. utterly unacceptable. In terms of Trump's appearance on Ingraham, this account says, he said, I agree to Laura Ingraham. I agree that we can't just import hundreds of thousands, but we still need people with talent. Let's hear it again. Not sure.
Visa thing will not.
Republicans have to talk about it.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
I agree, but you also do have to bring in talent. So this account is pointing out, he said, I agree, but you still need people with talent. That was when he was referring to the current skills shortage in our labor market, even his example of the GA plant. That's the battery plant. He said some were trainers. You can't just hire people on unemployment on 5 years to do the job without training. But you were focusing solely on the immigration policy. So again, two different things. Does there exist top-tier talent around the world we'd like to bring in? I guess there may be some. That is not 700,000 H-1B visa holders. They are not top-tier talent. It's just not the case.